In 2013, Vishy and Anand played in the Tata Steel tournament. In one of the rounds he faced Levon Aronian, and this game is deemed by many to be one of the best chess games of all time. You can decide for yourself whether this is one of Vishy's best games or if it's one of the best games of all time. Thank you for watching. Let's take a look at this game from Vishy's perspective, and let's just get started with this incredible game. We have the move d4, d5, and then c4, going into the Queen's Gambit. Vishy obviously declines this, instead going for the Slav defense, solidifying his center, all good stuff. Now, the knights develop on both sides, and we have the move e6 going into the semi-Slav. Basically, both these pawns protect the center, everything is good for black, nothing too risky yet, and then the move e3. Now, the first interesting, perhaps, move is bishop to d3, because we're taught, as a beginner, you don't really want to move the same piece multiple times in the opening. However, this move allows the bishop to be moved multiple times, because after pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4, and the move b5, the bishop has just moved 3 times. What's the point of this? Well, black has this weak c6 pawn here that could potentially be targeted by the rook later on. Also, what's actually good for black about this is that his bishop now has a square to develop to, and he didn't have to waste a move moving this, because he gained a tempo while attacking the bishop. So it's a trade-off, and we continue with bishop to d6, castles and castles. Now, what's white's plan here? White's plan, Levon's plan, is to attack this weak pawn with his knight, bishop, and queen, and start an attack. Now, Vishy's plan is basically to sort of break open the center and get counterplay. So we have the move a3, rook to c8, knight to g5, and all of a sudden this plan, it seems okay, but it's actually not that great. Firstly, there's this option for black. Bishop takes h2, which looks like you're just losing a bishop, but then knight to, after knight to g4 check, you're forcing the king. The king really doesn't want to come up, so after moving back, you just win this knight, and then this seems okay for black, but it's actually not so good, and white ends up getting this big center like this, and black's queen is hit, and this is playable for black, and the position is equal, but black's going to have to defend even though they're up a pawn. So instead of going for this sort of variation, Vishy decides, okay, I'm just going to, after knight to g5, he says, I'm just going to break in the center instead, get active pieces, and start sort of an attack against white's king like this. Because his bishops are active, his queen's going to get active at some point, and so we have knight takes. A better move potentially would have been bishop takes, sort of like the king can move, the bishop can come back, and they could trade like this potentially. This was an option for both sides, but instead what we end up getting is knight takes h7. Now, Vishy plays this very interesting move, knight to g4, basically going all in on an attack with his bishops and his knight. His queen's going to come up, and he's going to try to immediately win this game. So now white needs to actually, he probably shouldn't take this rook and be greedy, because that's going to be way too slow. The bishop is coming, the queen is coming, and he would get mated. So Levon instead just plays the move f4, trying to stop this bishop from actually checkmating him. However, what he missed, or not what he missed, but the amazing move that Vishy ends up finding, is after pawn takes, bishop to c5. This is absolutely incredible. Bishop to c5, this move, if you take it, okay, takes, and then knight to c5, and black is better here. Because no matter where you move the bishop, there's always going to be huge issues for white's position. Let's just say white goes here. Now we have queen to d4 check, and let's just say the king moves over. Then we have check, takes, like this, and it becomes really hard to stop checkmate on the back rank, and you're just losing. It's actually just mate in 4. If you were to play something instead, like after, let's say we play take, let's say the bishop goes here, well, now it's pretty much the same thing. You're just actually going to lose. I mean, this is pinned. You can't take this with your queen because you have all these checks, and it's really bad for, I mean, white's just completely being crushed. So what ends up happening instead of after takes bishop to c5 is Levon realizes he cannot take this bishop, or if he does, it's going to be pretty dangerous. He decides to just move his bishop back and attack this knight instead. Right? What's the danger in that? Vishy plays another astounding move, knight to e5. Now, you obviously can't take with this pawn because you're pinned. You can't take the bishop for all the same reasons as before. And you can't take like this because of an incredible checkmate. Takes, the best move is to block with the bishop. Takes, the king moves over like this. And now do you see checkmate? Queen to g1 check. It's forced to take with the rook. And this is smothered mate. So Vishy plays this astounding knight move, knight to e5. And now it's Levon's turn to actually find a way to counter this. He decides to take the knight here. And now here's an important move. You can't just blindly take the bishop, right? You need to play the in-between move, bishop takes d4 check. Because you take this with check, the king moves, and then you take this. Okay, this position is much better than if you just lost the bishop for free. Because if you take this, you don't want to lose the bishop. You want to keep the bishop and keep your attack going. Now is the point where Levon's like, okay, my position isn't great, but at least I can get this. At least I'm going to get the exchange, right? Now here, there's an option. You could just take this like this. However, the issue with taking this with your queen is your queen kind of wants to be attacking the king, right? Your queen doesn't want to be on f8. That's not so nice. Now, the other option is to take with the king. However, this runs into this move, and this is kind of annoying. It's still better for black, and black is way more active, but white has some chances here. So, what Vishy ends up doing after knight takes f8 is the move f5. This is a pretty brilliant move because the knight is actually still trapped, right? Now, if the knight decides to take something like this this is really bad because you're going to end up losing the game. Something like this, and it's impossible to stop mate, right? Because of the bishop, like this. You can't push this pawn because this is going to end up being mate. You can't take because you're pinned to the king, and it's really bad for white. So white's only other move after this is to move the knight here to try to escape. However, after queen to f6, the knight is still attacked, right? You can't escape anywhere. You can't go here because still you're going to get mated again. So what happens next? We have the move h3, basically counterattacking this. However, after queen takes, you can't take this because if takes, this is just mate because, checkmate. And there's nothing stopping. There's nothing that can block the king from check. He can't move over because of the bishop, and that's just checkmate. So we don't have that. Obviously, that would be a kind of lame ending to a pretty incredible game. Instead, we have queen to e2. Okay, this makes sense. Now you're just putting more pressure, I guess. Now the queen moves here, threatening to take with checkmate because, again, you cannot take because the pawn is pinned to the king. Instead, we get queen to d3. Okay, the whole point is to basically guard this pawn from being taken. However, the final blow is the move bishop to e3, sacrificing the bishop, but there's absolutely nothing to stop the queen from taking this pawn. And this is a pretty brilliant move, and this concludes our game. I mean, you can't take this because this is just mate. King moves over, checkmate. Really the best move that the computer recommends here is to just sacrifice your queen like this, which is really bad, or to sacrifice your knight and then sacrifice your queen. And this is completely unsavable for white. So thank you for watching this incredible game by Vishy Anand, and please subscribe for more videos like this one.